and welcome to Who Dares Rules TV. I am your host, Mike B, and here we are again. Here we are, and the final 5 of my top 50. Wow, what a journey it has been. It's almost been like old Frodo and the Fat Hobbit have been bumbling around this metro for quite some time. That's kind of what I feel like. I could do with a second breakfast for certain. Anyway, right, where were we? Oh yes, 5 to 1. So, let's just cut for the shit. Let's get on with it. And number 5 is going to be a game that you can't buy. Battlestar Galactica from FFG Fantasy Flight Games, based on the sci-fi series show from probably a while back now, maybe even getting on for 10 years possibly. I've never watched all of Battlestar Galactica. I thought the first season was astounding, which relates to this game more than anything else, really. And I watched up to, I think, the start of season 3, I think, and I kind of just lost my way with it. But that first season especially is just pulse-pounding, where you've got the Galactica racing ahead of the Cylons, the Cylon fleet's trying to catch them, they're jumping using the jump drive, boom, they go forward, they have to wait for the cooldown to recharge so they can jump again. And there's that constant fret, that tension, that like moment for that whole first season is incredible. Brilliant TV. It kind of feels like the submarine commanders and the ship. I like the retro cool look of the old school Galactica. All of that, very cool. If nothing else, just watch that first season. It was bloody brilliant. I hear that it kind of jumped the shark at some point later on. I will at some point sit down and watch them because I think they're on Amazon or somewhere. Anyway, preamble aside, yes, really dig it. The board game of Battlestar does really definitely the base game, and there is the expansions that tweak bits and pieces, and most of it is superfluous. It's that experience of that first season of you jumping boom, boom, boom along. Now, you need all of them to kind of make the best version of Battlestar, because you can kind of pick the Pegasus out of their second expansion. There's something in the third and fourth. There's little bits and pieces you pick from all of them to get like the Cylon board and the fleet board and all that, which builds that one game into something quite cool and incredible. It's essentially, at its core, a social deduction game. You are going to have Cylons in there. You don't know who they are. You don't even know from the outset if there is any necessarily. I think there's one. But later on, about midway through the game, there's a point where more can be added potentially. Again, you never know if they have been. That level of mistrust. I've had some like stand up at the table dice roll moments with Galactica. Moments of just like sheer elation and swearing, and the games I love all the little. It's a lot going on. You've got like, you can have a president, so someone's voted as president. You can essentially have a corrupt president. It could be a Cylon. They're making decisions that you don't know what the choices were. The same with the Admiral, is making choices of where the ship jumps to next. Again, some of them penalise you, but you never know. Is he making the best of those decisions? Is he human? Is he a Cylon? Is he bitching you? And there's all those little levels to it. Now, I've said earlier in this list that I think Secret Hitler is probably the best social deduction. It does kind of dilute that whole thing down into something you can play in about 45 minutes an hour. Battlestar is the opposite end of the spectrum. It's this giant bloated epic. It will play for probably 3 to 4 hours in a good game with a full sort of a complement of people. If you love social deduction, if you get into the theme, you don't need to be massively into the theme. As I say, I've only really watched the first couple of seasons. But just that experience at the table of that level of distrust, and that camps start changing, the options you've got of putting people in the brig. I had games where players have spent like forever in the brig making a stupid decision, or you can space them or stuff. I've had games where the Admiral turns out to be a bloody Cylon right at the end, towards the end of the game, and they've used the nukes to attack the human fleet. There is just so many tweaky moving parts to this game. It's astounding. It's a shame that it's not able to buy easily. The license expired with FFG. You can only buy it secondhand. I'm very fortunate that I managed to pick up all of my versions of it whilst it was still in print. In fact, I got some good deals on the other expansions, because at the time it was kind of meh. I'm happy I have that complete set of that, and I don't think I'd ever get rid of it or trade it. There is vicious rumour of the last few months or so that they may be reskinning Battlestar for Cthulhu themed, the Eldritch horror type stuff. which could work. I'm not convinced necessarily it would all, whereas Battlestar just all kind of, it gels. Like Dune, all the mechanics complement the theme, it all works in line with the theme. Anything else kind of attached to it, I'm not sure it will work so well. It's the same I brought back from a while back on the video. I mentioned Rex was a reskin of Dune with the TI4 universe. And again, it didn't quite work because those mechanics are so entwined with the theme. It just kind of just butts against each other. It doesn't quite, it's not a smooth transition. Still, getting that game out for more people to play, I can definitely applaud that. Maybe a Twilight Imperium reskin of Battlestar might be a better option. Just saying, there's things there, just thrown out there to FFG. But yeah, Battlestar Galactica, it is everything you've heard. Anyone who loves social deduction, everyone who likes the sci-fi show and just the theming behind that will adore it. Anyone who likes a game that goes on for a good few hours, get the real teeth into it, it's a solid, joyful experience. And I love it because every time I've played it, I don't think I've really had ever any duff games of Battlestar. They're always a wonderful journey and experience and to go on, to enjoy it. And, you can have those water cooler moment discussions later on with the people that played it. So Battlestar Galactica, I appreciate. It's not easy to get, but at a convention, there nearly always is someone with Battlestar games going on. So my suggestion is jump onto one of those if you can, and maybe sit tight for that reprint, or pick up Secret Hitler or something like that. Battlestar Galactica, yeah, brilliant. That's my number 5. Number 4 on this list is an easy pick. It's Eric Lang's Blood Rage. Blood Rage, yes, Vikings. It's kind of the perfect storm. Lang kind of got out the gate there with a really streamlined and decent game. It's a drafty game to start with. You draft cards, you've got dudes on a map, you're putting your Vikings down, you're heading towards Valhalla. It's all about fighting and building up your rage to be able to do more. And that it's a game that really complements the more you play it. Now, someone coming into it who's not played it against some hardcore Blood Rage players is going to get absolutely decimated. But if you, as a group, play it regularly, then there's a whole meta that starts kind of forming out of that game, and it's one that so much kind of rewards you coming back and playing it. It's just perfect. The theme, the theming, the game, everything all kind of it's a perfect storm. Eric's done a trilogy of these games. Then there's Rising Sun and the forthcoming Ankh is coming. Rising Sun, whilst I've got it, I played it a few times, it's not as enjoyable as Blood Rage. It just doesn't quite work. It doesn't feel quite as cool. I think maybe we're out of the Vikings. The Vikings do add a much to it. That theming of the Vikings, it's kind of the heavy metal kind of thing to metal. We did that earlier. But yeah, Blood Rage, really good, really solid. It is great. It's a really streamlined rules. I mean, Godfather is definitely a more streamlined version of kind of Blood Rage, but tweaks to it. But Blood Rage as it stands, I love everything it does. Is Eric Lang's probably his finest hour. It's kind of a follow-up to Chaos on the Old World. Again, a game you can't get very easily. Would probably have made this list if I owned it and had played it more, but it is a good game. So Blood Rage sits here, at least as a placeholder, maybe until Chaos on the Old World comes back out, but it is a solidly good game. Well worth picking up. The expansions aren't necessary. The Mystics are a nice addition, if I'm honest with you. The Gods, you can kind of not so much. And don't, for Christ's sake, play the digital version because it's a shocking abomination, just to say that now. So there we go. Call me or not, Blood Rage is my number 4 on this list. Number 3 on this list. Well, that's an easy one. I'm going to throw out here is Pandemic Legacy Season 1. Though, I will again say, disclaimer, I wonder if Pandemic Legacy Season 0 may well knock this off the slot, because I've heard some very good things about it. Don't own it, haven't played it yet. Once we get past our own pandemics and lockdowns and stuff, maybe it's one I'm definitely going to grab, because I love the Cold War theming of that. But as it stands, Pandemic Legacy Season 1, took Pandemic, which was a game I enjoyed. I've always been fascinated by viruses, pandemics, and all that sort of stuff anyway. So I'm living through one of my most favourite times. I'm living through this experience of which, I've played the games, I've read the books and shown always great interest in it. And now I'm living it. So I'm kind of like half like, oh God, this is terrifying. Oh, but this is kind of interesting. Anyway, Pandemic Legacy Season 1 takes that pandemic experience, which was a solid game and something I quite enjoyed, and then ramps it up with the Legacy being mashed into that. And it feels like a Netflix thriller series that you're playing weekly. Set over a year, you play it. Again, you're making permanent additions and changes to the board. And there's a couple of plot twists in the first season that are just astoundingly really good. Really just like, what the just happened? The stakes can't be any higher. It really feels like you're there on the ground. You're trying to control this virus as it's surging out of control. And in our current climate, it's probably one you could play with a level of fear and enjoyment in there. You could definitely do a better job than most of the world governments probably have done, actually, to be honest with you. But yeah, Pandemic Legacy Season 1 is fantastic. Season 2, not so much. Season 2, really, the quality, it legacized itself. That's a new word I made up. It kind of just threw everything into the mix into it. And we've never finished it. I think we just got to about October in our version of Legacy 2, and the game kind of almost felt broken. It wasn't really enjoyable. It's one we need to sit down and finish, definitely at some point. But it didn't hold our attention or joy like Season 1 did. In fact, I think I played 2 versions of Season 1. I think I've played that a couple of times, and I own a 3rd copy of it that I've started playing with the family, and we've only ever played like 2 games of it. That's one I want to go back to. It's a cracking game, stunningly brilliant, just brilliant. It's how Legacy works, taking a simple-ish version of a game and applying that legacy to it. Is how it seems to work, as we know from Seafall, which was built from the ground up and was a fucking abomination. I'm so happy for that game to come out, and then it was just such a blue balls, just a disaster. It's not. I've not warmed the time of it. Anyway, no negativity here. Pandemic Legacy Season 1, really good. If you only have to go to one Legacy game, it's a hard sell because Risk is really good as well. But I do like the theming with Legacy Season 1. And I'm really interested in Season 0. And I guess at some point we're going to get a 3rd one as well. And I think that's kind of the complete set. But there we go. Anyway, Pandemic Legacy Season 1. If you love Pandemic or have played Pandemic, it takes what is essentially a dryish game. I liked it for the theme, what it did. It was a clever kind of cooperative game, but just ramps it into the stratosphere as really gives it a story, gives it a post-pounding Hollywood style storyline that you're kind of hanging on to try and get through. It's brilliant, fantastic stuff. Pandemic Legacy Season 1. And speaking of disappointment and stuff to kind of really annoy people, we're going to stop there, I think. We're going to tune back in soon for the last 2 entries on my list. So there is 5 down to 3. So 2 and 1 to come. What will they be? Some of you may have guessed. I probably imagine you did. But we'll be back very soon for those last 2 segments on this top 50 list from me. Yes. Ta-da.
Bye.